Hey there, Braves fans. Welcome to another edition of State of the Braves. I'm your host, George McNair. Awesome to be back with you guys as the Braves, it's a little bit of an upswing here after this tough start to the second half after the All-Star break. The Braves have now won 3 out of 4. They come in to Milwaukee and take 2 out of 3 from a pretty hot Brewers team, a team that is, I would say, scrappy. I mean, a lot of people use that term for teams that aren't super powerful. I mean, that's true of the Brewers. They don't have a ton of power. They don't have a ton of offense, but they have really good defense and pitching, and that was on display in this one. The Braves offense was a little quieter than I would say what it's been in most series throughout the year, and yet they're still able to take 2 out of 3 from the Brewers. So a successful trip to Milwaukee, I would say. The Braves now sit 11.5 games up on the Phillies and Marlins, who are tied for second. The Marlins have been hitting some hard times lately. They were on an 8-game losing streak to start the second half after the All-Star break until yesterday. They finally snapped that, won a game on a walk-off single, but I think it was a single. But anyways, the Marlins have been fading. I have been kind of questioning the Marlins all season. Is this for real? It seems like they've been playing a little over their heads, so I'm not taking credit for this by any means or calling it or whatnot, but it seems like some of that has caught up to them. The Phillies, in the meantime, now they're tied for second, but they haven't been super hot either. They've been 5-5. So it's kind of amazing that Braves, it's felt like this has been a slowing down for the Braves, and yet they have actually gained a couple games in the standing. So being 11.5 up at this point in the season, it feels very comfortable. Of course, we know, especially if you've been a baseball fan of any kind for a long period of time, you know that no lead is safe, especially in July. We're a long ways away until the end of the season. So obviously you'd rather be 11.5 up than 11.5 down. The Braves probably have a nice little streak in them before the end of the season, and it'll be nice if it starts sometime soon. And yet the Braves take 2 out of 3 from Milwaukee. I just want to go through that series really quickly. Game 1 of that series, the Braves won 6-4 with Austin Riley just staying hot. Remember, he entered this series breaking out in a big way in the previous series against the Diamondbacks, and he continued that. He hit an opposite field home run, a 2-run homer in this game. Arcia also went deep in this game, and then the Braves were able to tag on a couple more from Ozuna. Michael Soroka started this game, wasn't super sharp. I mean, that's kind of who he's been, unfortunately, this season. I mean, he'll give you 6 innings, but he might give up 4 or 5. He gave up 4 runs in this one. Thankfully, the bullpen held it right there. It was not the all-star cast. I mean, there really is not an all-star cast coming out of the bullpen right now. But Heller, Jimenez, and Yates came on and were able to hold the game right there. Yates gets the save, probably his first save in a really long time. And thankfully, the Braves were able to hold on and win this one 6-4. Game 2, the Braves lost. And, I mean, you could call this the Sal Frelick game. If you watch this game, from a Brave standpoint, it's kind of frustrating because this young prospect making his major league debut basically stole the show, went 3 for 3, had a couple RBIs, had 2 highlight reel catches at the wall, and the Braves just felt like if he had not been in the game, the Braves would have won it, but he obviously was, and Milwaukee was able to pull this one out 4-3. This is the Alan Winans game. He makes his major league debut for the Braves. A 27-year-old coming up, not really a top prospect by any means for the Braves, but pretty cool that he gets this opportunity. I thought he pitched reasonably well, 4 1/3 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, and actually was kind of cruising until his last inning or so. But in his debut, he certainly pitched well enough to keep the Braves in the game. The bullpen ended up giving up 2 more. Offensively, Austin Riley stayed hot and went deep again for a 5th straight game. So at this point, with this 3-run home run, which was the Braves' total offense in this game, Riley had hit 6 home runs in 5 games. So just white hot from Austin Riley. But again, the Braves could not muster any more offense. They were able to load the bases in the 9th inning against Williams, who is one of the best closers in the game, but they just could not push across a run. The big highlight from that inning, though, and my big takeaway was Forrest Wall. If you were watching this game, Forrest Wall comes on as a pinch runner for Eddie Rosario, and this is his first ever action of any kind in the big leagues. And in 2 pitches, he stole 2 bases, and he did so without a throw on both occasions. Just totally swiped him. And, this guy's coming into the bigs. He's 45 of 49 in stolen bases in AAA this year. He's obviously incredibly quick, incredibly fast, great base stealer. So it makes you think that he might stay up with the big league club, if nothing else, to be a weapon off the bench as a pinch runner in those types of situations. I do wonder if he is good in the field. I know he's pretty good at the plate, at least in terms of getting on base. And if you're going to steal bases like he has been, if you have a nice on-base percentage, you might be able to find a way on the field. So, Eddie Rosario's been struggling a little bit. I'm not sitting here saying Forrest Wall should replace Eddie Rosario, but it just makes me think that he might be an option for the Braves if Eddie continues to struggle, or if he just gets a spot start, or if there were to be some kind of injury. Forrest Wall might be a bigger piece to the future of this Braves team, at least this season, than we would have thought a couple weeks ago. Game 3, the Braves won that one 4-2 on a late 3-run homer by Ozzie Albies. Ozzie does not typically show a lot of power the opposite way, at least from the left side of the plate, but he did in this one. He got a hold of it, crushed one to left center in the 8th inning. So it was a nice little comeback win for the Braves in this one. d'Arnaud also went deep early in the game off of old friend Julio Teheran. Kind of interesting that Julio comes in and pretty much silences the Braves bats throughout this entire game. I will say, as a former Brave, just a lot of respect to Julio Teheran. He had to work really hard to get back to the big leagues. He's basically had a lost 2 or 3 years since he left the Braves. And if you watch the Braves in those late seasons for Julio, he was clearly losing his stuff. I mean, his velocity was way down, throwing 86, 87 mile an hour fastballs. And so it looked like he probably would never be even a serviceable pitcher again. And yet he's gotten back with the Brewers. I think he had to go to independent ball and, go that route. But a lot of respect to him, and he pitched really well against the Braves yesterday. But thankfully, once he got out of the game, the Braves were able to figure out something and win this game. It felt for a long time like a flat game that the Braves were just going to lose, and they didn't, to their credit. Bryce Elder was pitching in this game. Remember, he's coming off of his 2 worst starts of his career in a row. I wouldn't say he was super sharp, but he was better. He allowed 2 runs over 6 innings. He had to labor to get through 6, but he was able to do it. And so, while he's not going out there dominating and bouncing back in that fashion, it's still encouraging to see a better outing from Bryce Elder in this one. All right, so some of the news that I want to get to for you guys today is this pitching carousel. The Braves have done a lot of minor moves over the last just few days. And honestly, it's probably needed. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries to their pitching staff that have cropped up after the All-Star break. And so you're seeing Alex Anthopoulos do some things that at the very least is strengthening the depth of the bullpen. Honestly, none of these moves excite me a lot outside of maybe the first guy I'm going to mention, but it's still good to obviously improve the Braves' depth. I'm sure that Anthopoulos a month ago was feeling really good about the Braves' pitching depth, and just been a ton of injuries to the pitching staff lately, and so he's had to address it. I don't think he's done addressing it. You guys know from that previous episode where I was previewing the trade deadline, I think the Braves need to go out and get at least one back into the bullpen guy. So I'm hoping that Anthopoulos is going to still do that. None of these guys really are that guy. but it's still good to have some guys to go to because the cupboard was getting a little thin with some of these injuries. All right, so the first move that Anthopoulos made this week was to promote Daysbel Hernandez. You might have seen him make his major league debut in this last game against the Brewers, and it went really well. He struck out the side, and that's kind of who he is. He's a strikeout guy. He can get in trouble if his control leaves him, but if he's throwing strikes, he's a really good one. So this is the guy that I'm a little more excited about to see what he can do. And obviously, the early results are really positive for him. So, he's 26. He's not a crazy young prospect, but he's had some arm injuries in his past, and, it just kind of, stagnated his development for a little while. But this is someone who I think can legitimately give you something out of the bullpen for the rest of the season. So keep an eye on him. The news to allow Hernandez to be added to the 40-man roster, the Braves had to transfer Jesse Chavez to the 60-day IL. So this is news worth talking about too. Jesse is a really important part of the bullpen. He got nailed by a line drive off the shin that obviously was just really debilitating to him, probably more so than we knew at the time. It took him a long time to be able to put any weight on it, which obviously if you can't put weight on your leg, you're not throwing. And so it's probably going to take him some time to get back to it. And hopefully he can get back to it quickly after coming off the 60-day IL, which would probably be about mid-August. But no guarantee there. He's 39 years old. You're not going to bounce back as quickly there. And I do wonder if Chavez's injury being longer than they probably originally planned, if this might make a bullpen trade a little more likely or a little more necessary. And obviously in the next week, we'll see that. The trade deadline is about a week away. Another thing, this is not pitching related, but Eli White was released. Well, it's a little pitching related. Eli White, outfielder, who's been at AAA for most of the year, got a cup of coffee with the big league club earlier in the season, but he was released when the Braves needed Alan Winans to make this spot start in Milwaukee. White was actually hurt probably for the season about 2 weeks ago, has a shoulder injury. So it's unfortunate for him. He had a tremendously good spring training, and he's a guy who has a lot of talent, kind of a right-handed hitting Sam Hilliard. But he just has not been able to stay healthy or to really put it together in the big league. So hoping for good things for Eli White, but he is gone for the Braves. Danny Young was also released. Young is a lefty pitcher out of the bullpen. For a couple weeks, he was with the big league club, but he's been mostly with AAA this season. So he was released also in recent days with all these the shifting the Braves have had to do on the big league club and the 40-man roster. All right, the last 2 or 3 days have been particularly busy. The Braves added Yonny Chirinos. So this guy has been a starter and kind of a long relief guy for the Tampa Bay Rays. They DFA'd him a couple days ago, and the Braves jumped on him. He's a guy who he has about a 4 ERA. Some of his peripheral numbers are worse than that. So I don't know what you're going to get from him. He might give you a couple good starts. He might give you a couple clunkers. But the Braves are obviously needing some innings pitched, and he provides that. Michael Soroka was optioned back to Gwinnett. And my take on that is, he has options. And Soroka has not been quite good enough, probably. I mean, he's still looking like he needs to iron some things out. It's probably really frustrating for him. But knowing him, he's probably very understanding that he hasn't been good enough to hang on in the big leagues. He might be right back with the big league club somewhat soon, but I just don't know about that. But Yonny Chirinos, he might be starting a game pretty soon for the Braves. Pierce Johnson is a right-handed pitcher. The Braves just acquired him from the Rockies. He actually has been a closer for the Rockies for part of this season at least. I think he has 12 saves this season, and yet his ERA is not all that great. I think he's around a 4.5, maybe 5 ERA. This is a guy with good stuff, And of course, if you're pitching in Colorado, maybe part of that is the altitude and just the difficulties of pitching in Colorado. So I don't really know, but the Braves did have to give up a couple of minor prospects for him. Victor Vodnik and Tanner Gordon were sent to the Rockies for Pierce Johnson. And then just today, the Braves acquired Taylor Hearn, left-handed relief pitcher from the Rangers, and they were able to get him just for cash. This guy, again, I mean, he is maybe flashed some good things, especially in the bullpen. He had been a starter and not been very good, but he's been better out of the bullpen, under 4 ERA out of the bullpen this season. So, do these guys, again, does Chirinos, Johnson, and Hearn, do any of these guys excite me? No, but it's kind of necessary depth, and the Braves definitely need that right now. I mean, they could show up in Atlanta and turn some things around. We've seen that happen in the past, and we can hope for that. The last thing I'll mention, pitching related, is, of course, we're still awaiting the return of Max Fried. He continues to rehab, and he's getting close. I mean, all reports are that he's probably one more rehab start away from debuting with the Braves. And if that happens, I'm going to guess, and again, this is dangerous to do, but I'm going to guess that he might make his return to the big league club around August 1st. That excites me, guys, because I'm going to be at the Braves game August 1st and 2nd. So I'm really hoping I get to see Max Fried, but obviously that date could be pushed back for any number of reasons. And, he could even be a little earlier than that, July 30th or 31st. So we will see. Obviously, the Braves get a huge boost by adding back their ace, Max Fried. And a lot of these issues are lessened if Max Fried comes back and is his old self. So again, what I'm seeing from these pitching moves, they are primarily bolstering bullpen depth. I do think the Chirinos move is interesting in one other way, because he is a little more of an established major league pitcher. He's been around for a few years. The move could open the door for the Braves to trade from their pitching depth if they really need to at the trade deadline. I'm not saying they should do that or they will, but it just gives them probably a little more flexibility to do that if the right trade presents itself. I'm constantly thinking that Schuster and Dodd, particularly Schuster, has probably proven to certain big league clubs that he's good enough to be a back-end starter, and they might take a flyer on him. Again, I'm not saying the Braves necessarily should shop around Schuster or Dodd, but I also think that they might be kind of thinking that those guys are not their primary options for the big league club anytime soon, especially with A.J. Smith-Shawver waiting in the wings and some other options for the Braves pitching staff. All right, another thing I just wanted to mention, especially as we are coming close to the trade deadline, a lot of the Braves' performance, I just am watching to see who's batting well, who's pitching well at this time, or vice versa, as the Braves and Alex Anthopoulos might make some moves at the deadline. It is the time to evaluate your needs, and it is interesting to me that Marcell Ozuna and Eddie Rosario have both been mired in some slumps as of late. So Marcell Ozuna, both of these are over the last 15 games. So Ozuna is hitting 145 with 2 home runs and just 4 RBIs over his last 15, and Rosario is hitting 149 with 1 home run and 4 RBIs over his last 15 games. So I wasn't certain that the numbers were going to be that bad when I looked into them. I knew that neither of these guys had done much lately. And of course, this is coming off of some prolonged hot stretches for both Ozuna and Rosario. They were both very good in June, but have not been very good as of late. So obviously, both of these guys, their only value is hitting. I mean, especially Ozuna, that's obvious because he's a DH. But Rosario is not giving you a ton in the field either. So I just wonder if this continues leading up to the trade deadline, if Anthopoulos might make a move for a hitter. The offense obviously is not the biggest need for the Braves, but especially with Rosario, if he does not play well at the back end of the season, it could be his last year in Atlanta. And he's known to be a streaky guy and a really good hitter in the clutch. So I doubt the Braves would dump him, but I do wonder if there might be some options in the outfield market that could be an upgrade. I mentioned Cody Bellinger as one option last time I was talking about trade deadline. And the Braves are always going to have, just clubhouse chemistry in mind. Does this guy fit? And I have no idea about Cody Bellinger and if he would be a good fit, but he certainly provides you a lot of postseason. He's been in the postseason a lot of years, and he would be an interesting addition. He would be a defensive upgrade for sure, and this has been his best offensive season in some time. So there could be a few other names out there, but he might be one also to keep an eye out for. All right, I want to finish this episode of State of the Braves with a little bit of a tribute to new Hall of Famer Fred McGriff. Former Brave Fred McGriff entered the Hall of Fame just yesterday, Sunday, and just have a lot of good feelings about that. I was a huge fan of McGriff growing up. He was my favorite player growing up as a Braves fan. I was thinking about this the other day. So McGriff was a Brave when I was 10 to 15 years old, which is really, that is your sweet spot of growing up, any kind of sports fan and idolizing a player. So McGriff was my favorite player during that time. I can't tell you how many times in the backyard I was trying to emulate McGriff's helicopter swing, and just loved McGriff growing up. That iconic swing, the just prototypical power hitting first baseman cleanup hitter. And he was one of the big power hitting home run hitters of the 90s. And that, along with being a clean power hitter during the steroid era. And I think he often got overshadowed during the 90s because he was clean, and he was, his home runs were going 400 feet instead of 450 feet, and he was hitting 35 home runs instead of 50 and 55 and 60. But he did it the right way. You all know, if you were Braves fans of that era, McGriff just always had a smile on his face, the nicest guy in the room. Everybody loved him. If you watch, I was able to watch a few minutes of the Hall of Fame induction yesterday, and he is announced, and it's like every Hall of Famer that was sitting behind him wanted to shake his hand and just congratulate him personally. So he is a beloved, respected guy around baseball. And was he the most dominant? Is he in the upper tier of the Hall of Fame? No, but I think he's a very deserving guy. I think he probably should have been voted in by the writers. He shouldn't have had to have waited this long. But he's in, and that's all that matters. McGriff with a career 134 OPS. And I mean, I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but just a pure power hitter. And what I wanted to do is give you guys my top 5 Fred McGriff moments as a Brave. And you can maybe quibble with some of these, but these are all that I remember just basically off the top of my head. So I clearly could be forgetting some big ones. And if you want to comment and leave your favorite McGriff moments, I encourage you to do that. So my number 5 Fred McGriff moment it happened in 1995, walk-off homer in the 9th versus the San Francisco Giants. So of course 95 is their World Series year, and this was off Rod Beck. It was 2-0 at the time, and McGriff hits a 3-run homer to walk it off. Rod Beck at the time, one of the best closers in baseball. Number 4, McGriff drives in 5 runs in the 1995 NLDS against the Colorado Rockies. He hits 2 home runs in this game. Also had a 2-run single. The Braves win 10-4, and this was Game 4. It sent the Braves to the NLCS, and again, in 1995, this is the eventual World Series year. So McGriff was a great October player, and especially 95 and 96. McGriff was maybe their best hitter consistently in the playoffs. Marquise Grissom, I remember, had a great 95 playoff run as well. But McGriff was huge in that playoff run. All right, my number 3 Fred McGriff moment was the 1994 game-tying pinch hit home run he hit off of Lee Smith in the All-Star game. Of course, this won Fred McGriff All-Star MVP honors. He went down and got a pitch. If you watch this highlight, it wasn't even a strike, hits the ball the other way. And one thing I remember really appreciating about McGriff is he's one of the first true power hitters I remember going the other way a lot. He hit a lot of opposite field home runs. He could turn on it with the best of them, but that one was kind of to left center field in a big moment. I remember as a kid, being really frustrated because he didn't play the whole game. And then he finally got a pinch hit in a big moment, and he hit that home run, and I went nuts. I do remember that. And it was a huge moment for me at the time, and it was a really cool moment as a Braves fan. All right, number 2, McGriff launched a homer off of Orel Hershiser to basically open the 1995 World Series. So this was McGriff's first ever World Series at bat, and he smoked a home run, and he crushed this one too. In old Fulton County Stadium, place going nuts. And McGriff hit 2 home runs in that 95 World Series, which, of course, the Braves ended up winning. Okay, and my number 1 moment for Fred McGriff is the 2-run homer that he hit in his very first game as a Brave. This, of course, is the press box fire game. The story goes, I mean, it just all is set up. McGriff was traded for by John Sherholtz. The Braves are down 9 games in the standings, and McGriff is on his way to the stadium, but he's not planning on playing that day because he's not going to be able to get there in time. And then the infamous press box fire breaks out at old Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. It delays the game for a couple hours, and McGriff is able to make his Braves debut. And this 2-run homer was kind of in the middle innings, but it tied the game. The Braves had been down 5-0. This home run tied it. The crowd's going nuts. And the Braves make this huge comeback where they go 51-17 to end the season. They win 104 games. The Giants win 103. And this is back when there's no wild card. You win your division. There's only 2 divisions. And if you win your division, you're in the NLCS. And that's what happened. Unfortunately, the Braves lost in the NLCS to the Phillies. I remember being devastated by that, by the way. But McGriff just, not only did he hit a home run in this game, but I don't have all the stats in front of me, but he dominated the rest of the way. I mean, he was probably the best player in baseball for that stretch. And I know Mark Bowman had a recent article saying that getting Fred McGriff might be the single greatest trade at the trade deadline that any GM has ever made. It worked out so well, not only in this season, but of course McGriff played 4.5 seasons with the Braves, was their cleanup hitter all the way through. And the other thing about Fred McGriff, he was just rock steady. You were getting 30 to 35 home runs from him every year. His greatest season might have been 94, and unfortunately, it was stopped by the strike. But McGriff was a great Brave. I remember when he moved on to Tampa Bay, and I was just devastated as a kid when that happened because, again, he was my favorite Brave. But I wish he had played more seasons with the Braves. I think if he had, his number probably would be retired by the team. I think that was another thing that hurt him in his Hall of Fame bid is pretty much every team he played for, he stayed for about 5 seasons and then moved on. So you don't really consider, a lot of people at least don't think of McGriff as with one team or one uniform or whatever. But I consider him a Brave. And, of course, he won that World Series with the Braves and had some of his greatest seasons with the Braves. All right, well, just want to, again, best wishes to Fred McGriff. You deserve it, Fred. And hopefully we can get another Brave and Andruw Jones in the Hall of Fame before too long. I will be looking forward to Andrew's number being retired. And by the way, I will be, August 1st is the Fred McGriff bobblehead night, and he will be at the stadium. So I'm looking forward to that too. Hopefully I can bring home a Fred McGriff bobblehead. All right, we are on to Boston next. The Braves take on the Red Sox in a quick 2-game series. Boston is 6-4 in their last 10 games, so playing okay. Remember, they are in a very difficult and crowded American League East division. They're 4th right now, but they're not playing badly, like I said, and they're probably fighting for a wild card at this point. So they've got a lot to play for. The first game, Charlie Morton is going for the Braves. The Red Sox have not labeled who their starter is. Then Spencer Strider is going in game 2 versus Bayo. Bayo's been pretty solid this season, kind of a mid-3 ERA guy. And if memory serves, he pitched against the Braves not too long ago and pitched pretty well. So obviously when Strider and Morton are going, you feel pretty good about things. A split would be okay. To sweep this 2-game series would be much better. This is kind of a quirky thing with the Braves. They tend to play a lot of 2-game sets with Boston in Boston for some reason. And they also have an off day today, which is Monday, and another off day after this 2-game set. So kind of a weird, quirky thing with the schedule, but hopefully the Braves can go into Boston, take care of business, and win these 2 games. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you sticking with me here in this episode of State of the Braves, and I will talk to you soon.